Don Richendrfer, and he has been in Nooksack and Everson as long as I remember, and my wife remembers going to school on the school bus with him every day. She would see him on the school bus when they went to Mount Baker, so she has had a lot of familiarity. His family's been very active in a lot of adventures in the Everson area, and they came in 1906, and I'm going to let him give you the history of the Richendrfer family. Don Richendrfer.
It's very nice to be here and see all of you, some that I know and some that I don't know. My son is Sky Richendrfer, and he's back there with his wife, Sally. And my daughter, Devin, is there. I'm not sorry you're here, but anyway, I'm glad you're here. And I thought I'd like to tell you that the Everson Grade School was a 4-room schoolhouse with 2 stories. And I have a picture in here, and it's not organized because I didn't know what we were going to do, but it's of the class that was sitting on the front steps, and you'll find it here someplace. I don't know how to arrange this now. Maybe I should tell the different stories about the first grade. We had Miss Rowell in our class, our teacher, and the thing that I did in the first grade was to eat the glue that we had. I don't know why, it tasted good. I think they would say now you were short of vitamin E. But anyway, we survived that. And then we went to the second grade, and I skipped it. It wasn't because I was smart. I think they just had too many kids in the class. And then from there, in the first and second grade, we went over to Miss Scrimshire's, and we had the third and fourth grade there. And then upstairs was the Miss Williams, Dorothy Williams. Everybody liked Dorothy. She was from Deming area, and she got us into a lot of beautiful things that we were able to work with. And she eventually married and went up to Alaska, and I received a letter from her one time, and she said they didn't have to have a refrigerator, they just put stuff out on the front porch. And that was the way they kept their food. But anyway, from the 4th and the 5th grade, we had things happen. There was Mrs. Pliny Snyder would come out from Bellingham, and she was a temperance lady. And we had a little program that we had to learn a poem. One that I learned was, I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and then what can be used of it is what I can't see, you know. But anyway, that was one thing. I spoke that, and I won a little prize. But we were told about the liquor and so forth, and it impressed me very much. And I went home, and Mother had a fruit closet, and on the top shelf there was some liquor of some sort. I never did really know what was in it. But I thought, well, we sure don't need that, and I poured it down the sink. And they didn't reprimand me. I wish they had. But anyway, that was the 4th and the 5th grade in there. In the 4th grade, no, the 5th grade, it was Miss Williams. We called her Miss Williams. And she had more ideas for us that were all artistic. And one of them was a phonograph record that she'd heated some way, and you pressed it in the middle, making a dent in it, all the way around so it looked artistic. And then you put a pot of flowers in there. And that was one thing we made. And another thing we did, we had Koba Camperman, which is Koba Skeffer, and she came from Holland, and the family. And she wrote back to the teacher that was the English teacher in Holland, and they got names for us to correspond with the children in Holland. And so I think there were about 12 of us that did that. But anyway, I was so excited when I got a letter from my first pen pal, and that was back in the 5th grade. So I enjoyed that correspondence, and I still write to their family back there, and they call me Uncle Don from over there. So I was there in '72 one time and visited them. Beyond Dorothy Williams was Clint McBeath, and he was a 7th and 8th grade teacher. And one day I had done something I wasn't supposed to, so he said I had to sit with Nellie Chesler. Well, I liked Nellie real good anyway, so it didn't hurt me at all. But one time I had a dental appointment, and I'd done something that was wrong in the classroom, and he said that I was to be staying after school. And so there were fire escapes, and when he went to ring the triangle, well, I sneaked down the steps and went to the dentist. I cared more for the dentist than I did for the school, I think, but anyway. So those are a few things about the early days, and we had the swing set out beside the building, and a couple of the boys were very athletic, and they would get in that swing and just go like crazy, you know, and the first thing you know, they'd go clear over the top of that swing set. And that was Felix Winsky and his brother Tony. I think they were the two that did that. But someone of note was Todd Gritch. He was a very interesting person, and his dad had a machine shop. And anyway, they, when we had things going on, I'm holding this book because we had a 1979 invitation to people that had been in the grade school, and we had a whole bunch of them, and you can take this around and see the names that are in there. There were about 75 of the grade school that showed up, and I thought maybe with the Nooksack and the Everson getting together like for tonight, maybe we could have another dinner like we'd had. We charged $3 a person, and we had a real wonderful time one evening. And then maybe the Nooksack would combine with us and we could have a regular dinner. But I called the city hall, and they want $200 for the cooking in the kitchen, and then you can only start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because they're busy doing something else, the card game and so forth. So I was wondering if we would want to go ahead and have another dinner of some sort, if we could use the Glen Echo School. I didn't know that. I thought there was a possibility there if we decided to do something.
That'd be good.
Well, it'd be kind of fun again, I don't know. So to get a hold of the people, if you see the names on there, it'll remind you of the ones that there are that are still around. Alice Ballard is someplace down in Oregon. I don't know just where she is exactly. If anybody knows how to get a hold of her, she's a little bit older than I am, a couple of years maybe. But there was she that would be, and then there's Terrace Pfluger. I don't know what her name is now. She was a Vale, and her name was Gritch. She was Todd Gritch's sister. And we kids used to have a lot of fun playing, running around their house. They lived over across from the Iversons. And we'd be running through the house. I don't know how the mother could stand it, but anyway, we'd get the hiccups. We'd laugh so much, you know, and the only cure for hiccups is peanut butter. So anyway, that's what we did.
Don, you had mentioned that the school was a 4-room school, so there were 2 grades in each class.
Yes, there were, yes.
So little kids were downstairs and the big kids were upstairs.
Yes, you could say that, right. And we had an orchestra that we did in Miss Scrimshaw's class. You had sand blocks that we'd scrape together, you know, and make rhythm out of them. And there was a little bird whistle that you used to be able to get, and it would have a little bit of water in it, and it would bubble as it did its little whistle. But I remember that mostly because music was something that I was very fond with. And My teachers were Mrs. Ahrens, and there's some of the Ahrens that are here now. And in the wintertime, we had the snow and the ice and all that, and they had their farm down there on the Everson Goshen Road, and there'd be a big gully and a little bit of a dirt pile, and the water would seep in there, and then it would freeze. We really used to have really good freezes. But anyway, the Ahrens would let me know, and I'd let everybody else know in Everson that I could. And we'd go down there and have a wonderful evening of ice skating. With the wind blowing, the sparks would be flying away. And after that, we'd have hot chocolate, and what else did we have? Donuts. So thanks to them, we had a wonderful winter time.
I understand that the room over the entrance was called Clint's paddling room.
I don't know that.
So you never had an opportunity
No.
to go in there? And
No, I didn't.
that's good.
Yeah. But Miss Rowell had a razor strap, I believe, and I did not get it used on me, but I maybe should have. But there were days there that we were afraid for the other kids that really got into trouble because of what, I don't know. But though I had a lot of things I was going to tell you. Oh, this was a harmonica that I found in a drawer that we had somebody come to show us how to play them, and I never did learn how. But I've got the directions and everything else. It's a little harmonica. You can pass it around if you like.
When was that? What year?
That was in the 5th grade again.
So what year were you in school?
I was born in 21 and in school when I was 6 years old, and so that would be 27.
You'd be 32 then.
32.
About 1932.
That'd be it, yeah. And our place, if you didn't know, is down there by the Everson Bridge. And my grandfather had a feed mill. I don't know how he ever got into that, but they had come from Missouri, and eventually Grandpa had a sawmill out in Blaine and on the Dakota Creek. And mother and the family lived nearby there somewhere. And my dad just said that he found my mother in a mud puddle that she'd fallen, and that it was a Custer, and that's where they lived, and Grandpa had the feed mill. But anyway, the feed mill here in Everson, I can't believe, someplace did you find that picture?
Under the water reservoir?
Yes.
It was in the same building, the water reservoir, was it?
No, the water tank for the water of Everson was on the back property of our home there. And beside that, where the house is now, is where the feed mill was. And there was an apartment over the feed mill, and Grandpa and Grandma lived there, and there was a walkway from the apartment over to the bridge to connect with the sidewalk that went along over the river. And there was quite a picture. It's really should be somewhere around here.
So the sidewalk was on the highway bridge?
Yes, the highway bridge, yes.
And they had a walkway beside it?
Yeah, and they had the water pipe that came across the bridge there too and went over to Strandell and fed the people over there.
Don's family ran the Everson Water Association until the tank burned down.
Yeah.
The water tank burned down.
Yeah, I never did know about what the fire, how it got started, and we didn't talk about it at home, but my dad cleaned it all up and had the house moved from down by the river, and they thought that if there was ever a flood, it would maybe hit the house. And we had a basement in our home, and we've never had water in that basement. But one thing that we did have in the basement was coal furnace, and it had clinkers and stuff that when it burned, it shook down into a bucket, and you had to empty it, and guess who had to empty it? And I hated it. But anyway, after I was married, my wife and I were living out at Wayne Stratton's place at Cayley Slough. And wouldn't you know, that furnace was in the basement. And so I got to use it twice in my lifetime. I hated it. And I was allergic to the dust and so forth.
Yeah. You moved the stove from your house in Everson down to
Dad got rid
Kale's
of
Pond.
it, right. And
Kale's Pond is 2 miles south of Everson and about a mile east.
yeah, and next Tuesday is my anniversary, or my wife's and mine. We were married in 1951 in Seattle, and we were married in a Baptist church because the University Presbyterian Church did not have a center aisle, and so the brides always wanted to, or it seemed like they did, wanted a center aisle so they could come down. But anyway, we were married in Seattle in '51, and it would be next Tuesday that would be the anniversary. So we were talking about.
I think we're at a point now where we can ask questions. If I've been keeping the mic away from you, do you have anybody have questions about his schooling and the early part of his life that he has reported so far?
Back in the back.
There's one way in the back.
I was wondering about the water in the water tower. Did it come straight out of the river, or how did you get the?
Yes, it did come out of the river.
It did?
A very muddy color.
Uh-huh.
We drank it or boiled it or whatever they did in those days. And I think we even found little minnows in the sink.
One of the interesting stories was the water tower was on top of a 2-story building, and it was a wooden water tower, and there was a blacksmith shop in the basement. That's where the fire was reported to start, and the Hunts lived on the main floor, which was their house, and the same level as the sidewalk, and the tower was above. Well, they thought they could just drill holes in the bottom of the water tank and put out the fire. The thing they didn't realize is it had 2 feet of sand in the bottom of the water tank, and no water came out of the tank when they drilled the holes in there. And I understand they even shot holes in the side of it trying to get water to come out, but as he said, it burned to the ground, so they had to move it out. And
This is a picture of the area where our house is, and you can see that it's been before it was moved.
This is an aerial view taken looking down at the house, and this was a new water tank then.
I think you're right.
This is a new water tank back behind the old water tank. So, but Everson did have a water system in the, when was that built? In the teens.
I don't have a clue on that really.
Well, you didn't get here till 6, so it would have been after that.
Yeah, but when I went to school, I was 6 years old, and when I came home from lunch one day, the house had been moved, and it was Mr. Eckler who had it put on the back of a, what do you call it, on the back of a truck. Can you imagine that big house being moved here in the earlier days? I can't believe I came home from school and there it was all moved up to where it is now.
So.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the transportation. Did the kids all have to walk to school all the way?
We in town did. There were the Carrolls and the Shudecks and all those who did walk to school. Yes, and Jack Emerson and the Emersons way down on the Emerson Road, I think it is, and the Vanovers, and there were the Vogels, and Irma Urosic lived down the road to that Emerson Road. No, not the Emerson Road.
Yeah.
But is that the Emerson Road? Between here and the Emerson Road is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And the Nichols, there's Iris and Billy Nichols, and a lot of people we've lost track of, and I don't know where they are or if they are anywhere. But I'm skipping around a little bit, so.
Most everybody walked in those days unless they rode horse. They were far away from they'd ride
Even
a
the
horse or
children.
something.
Yeah.
Some of them rode on the milk wagons that were picking up milk, and they'd ride in on the milk wagons as far as they could and then get off and walk the rest of the way.
So it must have been really hard because by the time they got out of school, and got home and be almost time to go back to school again. It was so far.
Well, things weren't quite as simple in the old days.
Yeah. Well, here's another picture, but this is current, or maybe 20 years old anyway. It's of the house. And
What age is this? 30, 27?
something like that.
47, I guess it's 47. Yeah, okay, this is a Richendrfer house.
Yes. And Dad was the manager of the cannery, as you may know, and Bert Stratton was assistant with my dad in the cannery. And of course the Kales, there was a Kale name, and there was Albert Kale. I remember Mr. Kale. I had gone to see him when he was at home at Glenn's mother's place.
Don, may I ask a question?
Somebody
Question?
asked. Yes. Oh, you?
I
Yes.
just wanted to know what the class size was in your double classroom. About how many kids was that?
Well, I think there were probably 15 to 20 is really, and I don't remember how many there were.
So you wouldn't stay with the same double classroom, you'd move up to
Yes,
the
you'd
to the
go
older
to,
kids?
yes, you would.
And then the younger kids would join you the next year?
Right,
So you were always shifting a little bit?
we were.
Did you get sick of the same kids over and over?
No, we liked it.
You
They
spent
were
2 years in the same room.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, I went there, but not at first. I went to a one-room school, my first 4 grades, called Forest Grove, at the corner of Noon and Central. And then they changed the boundaries. Everson used to be in the Mount Baker School District. Then they changed the boundaries between my 4th and 5th grade, so then I went to the old Everson grade school and Nooksack Valley after that. And I also had Clint McBeath as a teacher, and he was principal of the school, grade school.
Did you experience the paddling room?
Once, yes, I did once.
So he knows where the paddling room
I got
is.
one swat.
didn't matter.
So it really was real.
Oh, it was real, oh, yeah.
Jim,
Not maybe it was just a scare.
Probably should have had a few more.
Here we have from the First Presbyterian Church, we have a primary department promotion certificate for Don Richendrfer. And what is it? I don't see a date on
Odd
it.
house where they were born in Nebraska.
Which incident? It's 29. This was in June of 29. Incidentally, Don Richendrfer is still playing the organ at the Presbyterian Church at 95. He still, every Sunday, plays the organ at the Presbyterian Church that he had a promotion certificate in 1929. So he's been out at that church a long time. I see Mrs. Lunger was the,
Yes, and there was a Lunger who was the, what do we call it, at the school. He cleaned up the school.
custodian.
Yes, he was.
Ah.
Which was not Roy, which was the Lunger. It was
Percy?
no, it wasn't Percy.
Well, anyhow, we had a Lunger being custodian at the
Yeah.
school,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Can I, and Don, you mentioned that your dad ran or was
Yeah.
very involved in the Kale Canning Company. And I would like you to expand on that a little bit. Kale was my great-grandfather, so the cannery was pretty important to me, and I know the Richendrfers were very involved in the cannery.
Well, Dad, I don't know, he had been a barber in Seattle, in Bellingham, and with Dave Brown, who had the Brown Barber Supply, and the Browns were very favorite people of ours. We enjoyed them very much. But anyway, I don't know who invited, the Kales invited Dad to be the manager. And it was more fun to go over there and walk through the cannery and see all the people, the ladies all working away, and they had their homes to keep going too. But, oh, there's too much to tell you. I don't know what all to begin. But anyway, I have to tell you about going home from school And when I'd get home, Mother had always baked some bread, and we'd have a slice of bread with butter and sugar all over the top of it, and it was delicious. That was one thing I wanted to tell you.
Yeah.
And this little thing here is a little Eskimo that we made an Eskimo man, and then we glued the pussy willows on it. That was in Miss Williams' class. And I still haven't gone to why have I got it yet. I don't have a clue. But along with that, here's a picture of the kids all that went to school. And the year was, what did it say, Sally? Do you remember on there? Didn't know that. Now that's about Blaine. This one's the one I need. The date on there, what's that say?
These are school pictures with, let's see, does this have a date on it? 29.
Yeah, 29.
So you would have been...
8 years old.
8
years old.
8 years old. So you'd been in second grade probably.
Yeah.
Third grade?
Oh, I skipped the second grade, and I think the only reason it was not brains, I'll tell you that. But maybe because they couldn't stand my eating the glue anymore. But anyway, I did go into the third grade, and if anybody had any children to skip, they shouldn't do it because it was a hazard for me. Something was lost in my brain when I got skipped.
That was the glue.
It was the glue. Oh, yeah, of course it was. Just a few of these old pictures. This one is the grandpa's sawmill over in Blaine area. And this is a picture of my mother going to the Blaine school. And the names of the people that were there too. Thank goodness Mother wrote the names on these people.
Yeah. Did you ever eat the school paste, dig into
No,
the
not
school paste
again,
jar?
no. But I'll tell you what I did do. After there was in the school, we had the kids that were in the upper grades, they'd come down for a recess. And my favorite person was Tara Scritch. I thought she was the prettiest gal I ever saw. So I was waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs from the second floor, and I got to chew her gum. It was a wonderful experience. So let's see, that doesn't go there.
Don, you were telling me once that your dad was a salesman for Cannery too.
Yes, he was,
He sold to primarily to the War Department and during
Yes, he
the
did.
war. And you used to go with him.
No, I didn't go with him.
I thought you went with him.
No, I never did go with Dad. But he had quite a bit of influence, and the Cannery of Everson was able to supply a lot of the world with the produce. They had peaches and pears and beets and beans. And the beet juice was something they tried to get rid of after they washed the floor down at the cannery during the day. And it had a pipe that went out and came down by our house under the bridge. And this standpipe would have this beet juice with the green beans in it. And as it came down there, it had a height about a little bit higher than that. And so when it came down, it was always hot because, of course, it came out of a hose that they had. And so when it came and splashed into the Nooksack River, it made a whole bunch of foam, and we kids swam in that with the green beans floating by and we turned a bit pink all the time. But anyway, we asked Mother if we could go swimming in the river, and she said, well, yes, but if you drowned, I'll give you a good licking. So we didn't do it. And some more pictures, I don't know who those are. Why did I pick these out? I guess I was getting ready for that.
Tell your stories. I didn't know these have.
I know when the Good Templars got through with their building, they sold it to your dad. And do you know what he'd used that building for?
Which building?
The High Notes used it for a storage building. It was the corner.
Yeah,
he bought that from, I know my Uncle Dave sold it to him.
Oh, he did that right.
And I just wondered what they used that building for after the Good Templars moved
Yes,
out.
I wondered about that too. Only thing I remember about that building and the high notes and so forth, I went to Sunday school and I had my change for the offering, and I couldn't wait to get back to the Maddox's had a little store there, you know, that was open on Sunday, and it had licorice, and I loved licorice, and so I used my money from the church to buy the licorice. I did that.
I think the good Lord forgave you for that.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, I don't know about these pictures. You're welcome to look at them, but anyway, back to the school days, huh?
That's a good place to go.
Yeah. Well, Dad went away for the winter because somebody had to do the selling, and he was a good salesman evidently because they did very well. And he was 20 years the manager of the cannery, and we knew a lot of the people that worked there, of course, and the big barrels that they had with the cut up apple slices in it, you could go by and it was already salted and the water was, you know, and it sure tasted good. And Grace McElhoe would be a secretary in the office of the cannery. And she and I both liked green beans out of the can, and they always had to test them and see if they were all right, and so they were always open and we could have the green beans.
These were just blanched. These weren't cooked.
They were all cooked in the,
Ah,
yeah. And when I was in the service and I was in Hawaii, my mother sent me a package and it had fried chicken in it. She'd taken it over to the cannery and Dad had canned it. It was one of those great big gallon cans full of fried chicken from home. That was kind of fun.
do you know of anything else was put in those cans? There were a lot of things put in those cans.
Beets mostly.
Well, I mean, that weren't supposed to be put in those
Oh
cans.
no, I don't know of anything.
Oh,
They wouldn't do that.
I know, I've heard some stories.
Oh, you did? I didn't know that. Well, Dad was gone quite a bit during the winter, probably almost a couple of 3 weeks anyway. And I had an aunt that lived in Boston, and she'd always have strawberry shortcake when he came, so that was an incentive to go back and see his sister. She was the baby sister. There were 5 kids in their family. And, oh, there's a house, I don't know if I sent it around or not, but it's a sod house, and it's a picture of the family home in Nebraska before they left from Nebraska to come here to the state.
You said they came to Seattle
They came to, yes, see, I don't know how that
in
is.
89, same year we were.
Yeah,
stayed.
mother's side of the family came in 89 to Washington, and it was still a territory then,
Right.
1889 in the spring of 89. I've heard all this stuff, you know, and I tried to prove a bunch of it. And I have 2 great big books of Richendrfer names that I bought from one of the relatives way back east someplace or another. They sent this circular around and you could buy it if you wanted it. So it has stories about the early pioneers coming from Germany, and I never really knew where from, but to Pennsylvania mostly, and it was Indian territory, and they had to watch out for the Indians, and very scary times there. But I went back to a reunion in '86, and I'd never seen the people before or anything, but I got their name out of a Klein clan was the name of the book, and it was a lady by the name of Klein, K-L-I-N-E, that had come from England, from Germany. And so I had a good reunion with the people. It was 100 degrees in Pennsylvania that day, and they were very hospitable to their relative. One morning before I went, the phone rang. It was 5:30 in the morning. Hello, Don? Well, this is Robert Richendrfer, and he was living in New Jersey, and they had two boys, and they were going to come to the reception. And anyway, the one of them was in a wreck and it killed him, and they didn't get to come to that. So I never did meet the fellow that called at 5:30 in the morning. What else?
Yeah.
Run
When
out.
did you learn to play the piano?
I was 12, I think. And I enjoyed it. And Mrs. Ahrens, Spencer's mom, and your brother, and Patty, and the rest of them. And I enjoyed the music so much. And we used to go to the homes. We would go to the Hams, and the girls would take piano lessons, and the Bowards, and Alice Isabel Boward, and I was the only boy on the block that took it. But anyway, I knew some people at Sumas who had the same teacher. The teacher was Nanny Clark, and she came out from Bellingham. She lived on Chuckanut Drive. And anyway, she would stay in Sumas at Dr. Frank, oh dear me, can't think of the name of the doctor in Sumas at that time. But anyway, there were two gals up at Sumas, and they were both taking piano lessons, and so another fellow and I played double duets with these two girls, and we did really some beautiful music, and I enjoyed that very much. And
Did you ever take piano lessons at Mount Baker High School?
no, I didn't. I didn't know they did it.
Well, that's why my wife went up there, so she could get piano
She
lessons.
could get a, yeah.
Because her family couldn't afford piano lessons, so she went up there to learn to play the piano.
Oh, well, Miss Garland was a teacher, an English teacher, but I didn't know. I think she taught piano too. Do you know?
I don't know who the teacher was.
Oh, I don't know either. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of stories about all of the times at Mount Baker High School in the winters that were so bad. You couldn't go down the road. The snowplows hadn't been out at all yet, but we went across the fields and through fences and everything else. And what was the driver's name?
Yeah.
Duncan was his last name, I think. But that was high school.
Sometimes they closed school simply because they couldn't heat it.
Oh.
There wasn't, they didn't have insulation like they did in those days, so they didn't heat the school. I know Ina said it'd be sunny out and she wanted to go to school, and they said, can't go to school. And she said, why? She said, because they can't heat the school warm enough for your kids to go, because of northeaster wind blowing. Often when a northeaster blows, as you know, we have nice sunny weather, and she wanted to go to school. So, but the thing she remembers is that every morning when she got on the bus, that there was Don Richendrfer was sitting there in his special seat. He always had the jump seat in the front.
Yeah.
He captured that and rode there every Sunday, and she knew that.
But I like to talk a lot up at school and on the bus, and we'd laugh like crazy, you know, it was something silly. And finally, the bus driver took me off the bus, and I had to walk home from Nooksack.
Anybody have any questions about this segment?
What did your mom say?
Jim, I have a question.
Bobby?
So these kids from Everson, where was the first school at Mount Baker? I went to the school in Nugent's Corner, but there must have been one closer than Nugent's Corner.
The high school?
No, a grade school.
The grade school at Nugent's, yes, I know where it was.
In the Mount Baker School District?
Yeah. They wouldn't have to go all the way to Deming.
Lawrence, yeah, they went all the way to Deming. Deming was the school,
Yeah, right.
the high school.
Yeah,
Well, there were small schools all over in the Baker District.
Yeah,
yeah.
Hopewell.
The Auction Barn was a school, Forest Grove, Goshen on the Goshen Road, Harmony, and there were just small schools because people had to walk. So they had these small schools in grade school, and then they had a bus to go to high school. I can remember my
Right.
brothers would go to catch the bus to go to high school, but I had to walk to grade school. And every morning I would pass a lady, Art McMillan's daughter, Mary Margaret McMillan, she would be walking to the Everson Goshen Road on the Central Road to catch the bus, and I was walking the other way, and then we'd pass the other way in the evening.
I remember the first
Did
grade
that answer your
school.
question, Bob?
Not really. There's got to be a school closer than Lawrence for these kids to go all the way from Everson to Lawrence. That's a long way.
When the schools consolidated in 30, Nooksack and Sumas consolidated high schools and built a new one on the Badger Road. At the same time, Mount Baker was at Deming, and Everson wasn't going to consolidate with Everson and Nooksack, so they went to Mount Baker. They went to Mount Baker. So Everson, all of the Everson schools were in the Mount Baker School District, and they were bused to high school.
Well, them days they were busted.
But they,
high school, yeah.
But like you said, the grade school they walked.
Yep.
Yeah.
But when you got to high school and they took the bus, that's the reason the bus went. Inez picked it up at Motor Inn. The Nooksack bus went right by her house, but she wanted to go to Mount Baker, so she walked a mile down to Motor Inn and picked up the bus there, which was coming from Everson, already had Don on it, so. Any other questions? Oh, you got a question on it?
Yeah, Don, I was wondering, you said your dad traveled in the wintertime to sell for Kale Cannery, right?
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Where would he go?
Well, I don't know how he got the hold of the people, but there was Sussman and Wormser, which is the canning company of the United States, and there were others too, and then there was the Navy, and they went to all those places to.
So he traveled
He
pretty
traveled,
well all
yes.
over the country then?
Yes, he did. Yeah,
Kale Cannery was known around the world
Oh, I know.
for their Blue Lake beans.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did he ever go overseas to sell?
No, he didn't know.
Yes.
What would you do to entertain yourself when you came home from grade school with your sister, and what was an afternoon like in your home? You probably spent some time on the internet and on your cell phone. What was an evening like? You played outside, and then what was like dinner like with the family and that
Yeah,
sort of thing?
well, one time when I came home for lunch, Mother had cooked some liver, and I could smell it all the way from school, I think, and I hated it. I wouldn't eat my dinner, and I probably got sent to bed for that. But anyway, Mother sneaked up a sandwich for me upstairs in my room, and then not to let Dad know that I had had something to eat with Mother's help, we had a laundry chute from the upstairs that we went down, and so we'd lower the dishes down that chute. So lots of interesting stories, but I don't know.
Did you have chores to do in the evening?
Hardly any, and I don't know why, but my music, Dad was fond of music, and Mother too. Oh yes, one thing we did at grade school, Miss Williams brought this phonograph record business, and I was so excited over the fluting of the edges of the record when it had all been put up, made it look like a real antique or something. Well, I went home and I took the records that the folks had, the old Victrola, and I heated it in the oven, and that was the end of Robinson Crusoe.
The question was raised about the kind of lifestyle that we lived in the old days. Some of us lived in the old. I'm not as old as Don is, but some of us lived in the old days about what we did when we got home. Of course, we didn't even have telephone when we started, so we didn't have anything to go on. Some of us didn't even have electricity yet, so we still had to worry about lights. And but Don can tell us what his day was like.
I can't remember, Sky, what we had for meals. They were great. I was a pudding face. I very much liked bread pudding and the nice white, egg white topping, and stuff like that. But there are a couple other things I thought of that I was going to tell you about. One of them was the eclipse that there was, and I don't know, it was in grade school that we saw it, but we took a piece of glass, and somebody was inventive, and we smoked the glass with a candle so that it would turn black, and then we could look at the sun through that. That's one thing I remember.
Without
Let's see.
ruining your eyes.
But what kind of food did we have at home? Everything, I think.
You were telling me that after school you often would either play Annie over or something or tell stories. And you
Yes.
were a storyteller. Tell us about that.
Well, it was Jim Bailey was one person, the kids, and they were little kids, and we'd just go sit on the sidewalk, and I'd start rattling off something. I have no idea what it was, but we entertained ourselves by telling little stories. And the other thing that I did was this water tower that supplied the water for Everson, the water tank. I would go up that thing, that water tower, climb on those boards, which were about, let's see, what would they be, 4 by 12 or something like that. And you walk on this narrow board, go across, clear up there in the top of that building, and we'd take our paper airplanes and throw them off the top so we could see how far they float. And what else? Swimming in the river, of course, I told you that. My sister caught a salmon one time on a safety pin that she'd gone down the river. She hooked it. It was evidently in the fall when the salmon were going to spawn or something, because she didn't have much trouble catching it. But it was quite a thing for her to have it. And food, Sky, I still don't know. By the way, Sky is the most marvelous bagpiper in all the world. He's my son, and he's been playing since he was 12 years old, and he's been the head of the Celtic group in Mount Vernon, where they live, and he was mayor 2 sessions, was that right? Yeah. So what did you do at home when you got through the day?
I was usually in trouble, as I remember.
I suppose, yeah.
So was he.
I know.
Yeah.
I didn't ever eat glue. I want to.
No, you didn't. You just haven't lived until you did, I guess.
Well, life was a little different in the rural areas than it was in the city boys. City boys couldn't sit on the sidewalk, city boys could sit in the sidewalk and tell stories. The rural boys had to milk cows and all that sort of thing. So I remember getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, because I had to milk and still get to school and catch the bus at 7, but a little after 7. So I had to, I don't know what the school smelled like, because most of the people were milking cows in the morning, so they didn't have time to really shower and everything before they went to school. So that was, and then also, like I said, we didn't have electric early, so everything was, all our heat was by wood, so we had to get the wood in and all this sort of thing. So, and then telephones were, we had to communicate, in other words, so sometimes we had to go walking to neighbors to tell them stories or get them to come around, whatever.
Our phone number was 5712.
4 digits?
Yeah, we had 5712 as our number.
Gee, when I remember first telephone, I remember we just rang and Matilda would answer and say, "Matilda, I want to talk to Aunt Hattie."
And Dad gave me a quarter to take my bicycle and take a telegram down to the telegraph office where Hilda Kinley was working in there, and Mrs. Pike,
Matilda, yeah.
Pike. Pice was the name of the people that lived where this building is now. She lived on the corner.
Ah.
Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Piest, P-I-E-S-T, and there.
P-I-S-C, no, I don't know that.
P-I-E-S-T, yeah. And there were the Berkeys who had the radio when they first came out, and their daughter Betty Berkey wanted to learn how to play the piano, and I was just still in grade school, and she would have me come over to their place and play the piano, tried to teach her how to play it. I was doing that way back when.
Yeah. We didn't have the radio either, see? We had to make our own music and all the rest.
And Bachers, I think, were ones of the first that had radio, and we would go down to play bridge and so forth, and they'd leave the radio on, and I could listen to the music was particularly important to me. And when we went down to play bridge in the evening, Mother and Dad would be with the Ballards and the Hams and everybody else. And we kids were tucked in out in the car, if you can imagine. I think of doing it nowadays, you don't do that anymore.
No.
But they'd sneak out and take a peek to see if we were still there, you know, and we'd sound asleep. So we seemed to go with that type of entertainment.
Don was sharing in the break time that he put a rock on the railroad track intending to just to derail the train.
It was supposed to be fun. I don't know why it was so important to me to try and do something like that, but the train survived, thank goodness.
I remember putting pennies on the track, and I was afraid that would derail them, but it didn't. It just flattened the pennies.
Yep.
I don't know how I had such a wild idea, but it was.
You just were bored.
You think so?
Yeah, I think you
You
were
were
bored.
bored?
You just wanted to get in trouble.
I wanted more paste out of the roll at school.
Yeah,
We were creative.
very.
Well, they had the creamery here in Everson. The Carnation, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and there was Joe Anderson, who was the druggist, and the other fellow, I never did remember his last name.
Did they still have the livery stable when you were here?
No, not that I know of.
We were moved up to cars by the time you got here.
Yes.
They had a livery stable on this side of the river because the horses couldn't cross the river. So if you rode out from Bellingham, you left your horse on the other side of the river, took the canoe across, and then got another horse on this side and rode on up wherever you were going.
That was trouble, a lot of trouble.
It was right where Napa Motors is now. That was where the livery stable was. Sears owned it at that time. Someday we'll get a book written about Everson, and we'll have everybody will know this.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
The one thing I thought I brought was the music and a story. It was called The Windmills of Holland, and Miss Williams put on an operetta in the Meades building, which was the Nordstrom building first. But after Nordstrom's didn't have that any longer, why we roller skated in that building. But what was I going to tell him? Blank.
When
you get older, that happens frequently.
I'm not
Talking
getting
about the
old.
Meades building.
Oh yeah, something. Oh yeah. So we put on the operetta, and it was all the girls got together. Excuse me, and they made paper mache tulips and so forth. And it was Windmills of Holland was the name of the operetta. And I was a soloist by singing a song about this little girl that I'd met in Holland, as she and her folks had come over to visit somebody. And anyway, I was smitten by her, and I sang this song carrying a goose, and the goose honked all through the whole thing. But the opera was a success. We had a lot of fun putting it on, and it was really beautiful because the paper mache, I think is the way you call it, you could crease it and it would stay that way, you know.
Yeah.
But what else was I going to tell you?
You want
Makes it,
Oh yeah, here we go. Leslie was kind enough to bring some, what they call them, burdocks. And one of our pastimes when I was younger, Sky, was to make burdock baskets. They stick together and you could make a nice little basket with a handle on it. And this is what James has come up with, and it's a little stuck together pieces, pass it around, and you see it, the value of it.
You make a bottom out of 6 or 8, and then you build up the side, and you put together a bunch, and that becomes a handle.
What's burdock?
There's Burdock.
Oh,
So thank you, Leslie, for bringing those, because that adds to the program.
This is Burdock.
interesting.
If you've ever been around Burdocks, you know what Burdocks are.
Yeah.
What did they?
They stick to you.
Oh, good.
They would get in
Thanks
the
a lot.
tails of the horses, and
They what?
the horses' tails that get the burdocks
Oh,
in.
I've
Oh,
heard
yeah.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you went through a pasture and had
Yeah.
burdock in it, then you had to brush your horse out because it's full of burdocks.
Yeah,
Or your
Of course,
dog's
that's
tail.
the way the good Lord had us spread the seeds around, is things like burdock would attach, and then they'd go miles away and drop off and become another burdock plant someplace else.
well, Skyway, I had an electric train, I was lucky enough to have that, and we played tiddlywinks. And then another thing that I did, which was naughty, was that my sister, I had her poke her finger into the socket of the electricity. Nothing ever happened, but it's sure, thinking about it, I think of how rude could I get?
Did you tell her to stick her finger in?
Another time I cut her hair with the scissors. Dad had a bag that he had for the barber shop, you know. Well, I knew where that was, and of course I sneaked the scissors out and went down by the rhubarb, and rhubarb was nice and bushy, and I cut her hair.
Oh, gosh.
Did you
Nice,
do a
mild
good
mannered
job?
I sure did.
Don Richendrfer.
Was she happy?
Well, she didn't care. She went along with it. It was easy. She was real nice. Yep.
Would we have been afraid to know you in those days?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Did you let your children do that?
Sure, they could do anything they wanted. Well, I don't know, Sky, what else we did. Mother was the best cook in the world, I think. And when I came home from school one day, I ate a whole box of raisins, and I suffered from that. We had the chicken pox in those days. My sister had the whooping cough. And one time she almost swallowed her tongue. Dad went diving after her tongue so that she wouldn't choke to death.
Was she older than you?
No, she was younger.
Oh, shame on you.
And I had my adenoids out twice and my tonsils out once, and I hated the smell of ether.
Was that the doctor's fault, or did you really have 2 sets of that?
I don't know, there was the fad, I think.
How many remember an ether treatment? There's a few of you. I remember when they put that hood over my head, and I knew I was dying. That was the end of my life right then. I would think I was 6.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I was around that age too, a little older. And one time at school, in the grade school, we had these wonderful chutes that were about as tall or higher than the ceiling. They were for the older kids, of course. And I had seen them going up the steps, hanging onto the railings, and then they get to the top and they'd slide down, which you would do on a slide. But anyway, some of them were smart alecks. Of course, I was too. But they would hang onto the railings and just let themselves slide clear to the bottom. Well, I broke my ankle that day when I saw they were having a ball game, and I thought, well, here's my chance, and so I did that, and I broke my ankle. And I walked from the school to my home, and I collapsed when I got almost to the house and Mother saw me coming, and so she ran out. The sidewalk is another story. Mr. Weinmiller was a night watchman at the cannery, and he was a big old fellow with a big stomach and everything, and like they used to do in Germany, they carry their stomachs around in a wheelbarrow, I think. But anyway, they put in a sidewalk along their property. It was really nice, and we kids could roller skate on it. but he slept during the day, and that was the end of our roller skating on that sidewalk. And Mrs. Weinmiller made wine and put it in her closet, or made her wine in her closet.
So the name was very appropriate.
Yes, it was a good name for her.
Well, how do you make wine in a closet? How do you make wine in a closet?
I don't even know how to make wine, so
I don't
I don't know how you can make it in a closet. So. Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
Don, how full was the river of salmon when you were young?
I don't remember how full it was. People would always come to our property, you know, and sit on the bank there because it was picturesque and also maybe good fishing. But Mrs. Sturgeon, you know who that would be, you would. Anyway, she used to come with a sunbonnet. They were from Tennessee or someplace. And she would chew tobacco. And she'd bait her hook with it. And she was the one who caught the fish all the time. But we used to sneak up on her. She'd be on the bank and we'd see how close we could get without disturbing her, you know. And another thing, naughty, we found driftwood and we smoked the driftwood. It was a thing to do, I guess. It's a wonder we didn't start a fire someplace.
Forest fire.
What?
A forest fire.
Well, yeah, but no forest, thank goodness.
Well,
We rural people have lots of fires.
Yeah,
We burned brush, had to burn brush.
yeah. You had to do it to clear the land.
Yeah,
Still do.
they'll do. Anybody else have any more questions? Way in the back.
So you've been playing music for quite a time, and you've seen styles probably come and go. And I have a two-part question. What is your favorite music to play, or favorite song? And what is your favorite music to listen to, and are they different?
Oh, I like the programs on the Arts Channel very, very much. There's a lot of repetition, but some of the pieces, one of them is Serenade to the Moon by Dvorak, and another one I liked was the Pearl Fisherman duet. I don't know the story really, but those two are types of music that I really like. And I'm a little bit bored with ballet, but I can watch the programs and enjoy it and see what is new, if there is anything. But piano music, I was doing quite well playing for years. I even took when I was in Seattle. And what do I say about our piano teaching? Just that we enjoyed it. I think that people were always nice. I used to go to the homes up in Kendall and even up to Maple Falls, and that way they didn't have to take the younger children out. I enjoyed going to the home, and everybody was very welcoming, and I enjoyed that very much. So what else?
Have you quit teaching?
Yes, I have, although there were two gals at the Rosewood Villa, which I worked with, and one didn't have a piano, but she had a keyboard. And she enjoyed it. She was from Ethiopia, and was always wanting to play the piano. Then she finally stopped because they didn't have a piano. But Sky has a marvelous piano. He has a. You want to tell him about your building?
It's your show, Dad. Yeah.
Well, you're part of my show. Anyway, they have a grand piano. It's a beauty in the building downtown Mount Vernon. And I got to put my fingers on the keyboard. What else?
I was just wondering, what is your favorite hymn to play?
Hymn to play? Oh Lord, our help in ages past, whatever the rest of the words are. And I think that's a nice one. And then I like, what do I like? Day by Day, and then With Each Passing Moment. That's one of my favorites. And that Sunset song, to Beyond the Sunset, those are all old-timers. And it seems like every Sunday we should be playing the piece, Come to the Church in the Wildwood. It's still an old favorite. It's got meaning and everything else. So those are a few of the ones that I like. And we used to have a choir with 19 in it, and our church is now it's still there. It's a beautiful building, and there's still nice people, but we don't have very many. And it's sort of the run of the way the things are nowadays. The churches are all having that, but some of them with the younger life are quite enthusiastic and are doing well. Did I answer any question that you liked? Okay.
Me? You did sing too, didn't you? I
Yes.
remember you singing in the choir.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
But I was in the Theater Guild in Bellingham for several years, and we did HMS Pinafore and Mall and the Night Visitors and South Pacific and all those.
And I saw HMS Pinafore. Didn't know you then, though. Didn't know you were in it.
Yeah, the lead gal was from Linden. I can't remember her name was, but we were chosen. And the other thing I was going to mention was the Everson Theater, the old place which is now a tavern. Is that right?
No, that building's gone.
The
Grell's
building-
Opera House.
Yes, Grell's
Grell's Opera
yeah.
House was converted to a theater.
Yes,
Yeah, but it's gone. It's where the coffee stand is.
Yes, that's right.
Out there now.
Yeah, and Charlie Grell had the hotel there, the Grell's Hotel. My dad thought they had the best potato soup I think there ever was. But this one time, well, my aunt Kate was a school teacher in Wenatchee, and she came to visit us one time in the winter time, and it was snowing like crazy. But the theater was going, and Todd Gritch was running the projector, and they had a big old pot-bellied stove in the middle of the building, and they'd go to put another log in, and the sparks would fly all over the place. But it was a lot of fun having that theater there. And the movie that my aunt wanted me to see was Elizabeth, Queen of Scots. And so it was an educational one that we enjoyed seeing. And then when in the high school, or sometime in there, we had the play put on. It was called Bluebeard's Eighth Wife. And it was kind of a spooky thing, you know, and there was this big doorway up on the stage, and then they said they'd lost the key and they never knew where it was. So it went all through the whole show with that, looking for the key for this room. But anyway, finally they found it, and the lights went out in the theater, and there was a light shone on this doorway, and they opened the door, and here was his head hanging there.
Oh, God.
You know, and it was my sister, and we had a big time over that. And it was a lot of fun putting on that play.
Why, because your sister was there, hanging?
Yes, you put her head through the back of the little closet.
And you did it, right?
No.
Say, Don,
What?
do you remember a Pete Harkness?
Oh, yes,
I was able to, he had a daughter named Mary. She passed away
I
approximately
think I remember that there was.
3 years ago, and I had a chance to talk to her.
Oh, yes.
And the picture of the Harkness Ferry,
Oh.
the picture which is at the senior center, that big picture, and I asked her if she could identify in that picture like her father, and she could not, but I had a
Oh.
chance to talk to her.
For goodness
And
sake.
she had quite the stories.
Fern, you had a question?
Don, when you were dating girls, what did you do? Did you take them dancing or roller skating or ice skating or what?
Well, the two girls that Sue asked, there was Beatrice and Corrine Frost. And they were the two that played the piano. And Ernie Featherkyle, his dad was a judge in Bellingham. Ernie and I played the other. We had two pianos, and we had four of us playing the two pianos with some beautiful music. And anyway, Corrine was a girlfriend of mine, and of course we sent cards and letters and stuff. And let's see, so, but Beatrice was always kind of bossy to her sister. And anyway, she played the piano beautifully, and of course it took the two of them to do that. But one thing that was so interesting in my life was that Corrine was, I think, the first girlfriend that I knew. And when I got to Mount Baker High School, Pauline was another girlfriend that I liked very much. Her folks had the store. And then there was, in Seattle, when I was in the service, there was Kathleen, that was E-N-E. And then I married Colleen, which is her sister, so they're all E-N-E's then.
What did you do on dates?
Well, we drove around and so forth, and one time we had a wonderful time. It was from high school, though, and after the banquet, the junior-senior banquet, I had the car. I was 16 early, and I was able to have the folks' car. Dad was back east, and I had it all arranged. We were going into Bellingham to see a show after the banquet. So that was around 8 o'clock, and of course we drove, I suppose, 50 miles an hour to get there. But anyway, we had to have a milkshake at the Green Rooster, right by the Avalon Theater. Oh, there's another thing I want to tell you, I hope I don't forget. And anyway, we decided, when we were talking, I said something about phosphorus in the water, you know, like out at the beach or something. And they said, they didn't know what it was. And I said, oh, well, let's go out to Fisherman's Cove and we'll look at the sparks and stuff that we can get out of the water. So we drove out there. And then finally I realized, my gosh, it's late, you know. How late is it? Well, I had to get the kids back to Acme and Deming. And we had a marvelous time, of course, and every time we threw something in the water, it made sparks and that. So anyway, I got them started delivering them to their homes. And their folks weren't up, but I was sure mine would be, my mother anyway. So as I came by on the road between Hopewell and Nooksack, there was somebody out plowing the field already. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. Oh. And so when I got home, the lights were on all over the house, and Mother was up. But I didn't call because she always went to bed at night at 9 o'clock. And I couldn't tell her and call her and disturb her. That wouldn't have been nice at all, you know. So anyway, it was 2 weeks before I got the car again.
We can still go ahead. You're through?
Yeah.
Camera's off now. You can say whatever you want to say.
I was wondering I had my maiden name and my mother, which was Eileen Gooding.
Yes.
And did you know some Goodings from Glen Echo? Like
Earl.
there was Fred and...
Was Earl Gooding?
Pardon?
Earl?
Earl, he was not a relative.
Oh, was he not?
No, but he was, the last name worked. But did you know, how about Jean?
Jean what?
Jean Gooding?
No, I don't think. Yes, I did know the Goodings, but I don't remember where they lived.
I just thought I would ask this because...
Yeah, I don't remember exactly.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
You have a question?
Don, you said you've been going to the Everson Presbyterian Church since before 1929 at least.
Yes, I was.
But it was in different locations?
The church was a different location, no, but it burned in 37.
It moved in 14, so that was before him. Moved over to its present location in 14, then it burned down in 37, and they rebuilt it on the same site.
Yeah.
Okay, and it had been flooded at one point in a different location?
It was over at the crossing in it was moved from the crossing to West Everson, where Bud Iverson's house was. And they was there from 01 to 14. And then 14 it moved over to where it is now. But when it flooded, it was down at the crossing. That was before 1901. And it flooded out, and then they moved it up to Everson and in 01, and then 14 they moved it over to the place where it is now.
And then it burned in 37.
And then it burned in 37.
In the middle of the northeaster.
Yeah.
And the sparks flew clear over to Speddings and Ballards and that far away.
Any other questions? Reg? Oh, it's back there.
So, Don, was school always closed when it was flooding, or did you walk through the water ever to get to school?
Boy, I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? You remember the floods?
Yes, the main streets of Everson, yes.
Can you put the microphone by him? I can't hear him back here.
The school was above the floodwater, so I don't think the school was ever flooded.
No, but he had to walk to school,
Yeah.
so
Well, you walked through floodwaters.
you went ahead and walked through the water.
We didn't have any water on the main road before the...
Can the microphone be by him so I can hear what he's saying?
There was a flood in 17, but you wouldn't remember that.
No,
one.
I wouldn't remember that.
Next one was in 50, the big flood.
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
No,
That one was in summer, though, wasn't it? June?
I don't remember. I don't know.
A lot of our floods were in summer, in June. But the one in 17 was in the middle of the winter because it had ice on the scale and things like that. We didn't have a lot of big floods, but because we didn't have the dikes in those days. And when Corps of Engineers put in those dikes, that's when we started having the big floods pretty regularly because it flooded downriver. It went on by Everson.
And what about the boat, the tugboat or something that would come up the river? Would it come
The
just...
steamboat would come up to Linden, but there was a log jam on this side, so they didn't go above Linden.
They didn't go above...
They just came to Linden.
Yeah.
There was steamboat traffic up to Linden.
And on Lake Whatcom, too.
Hmm?
There was steamboat traffic on Lake Whatcom.
Yes.
Up to...
Ran for both ends.
Yes.
From Blue Canyon out, or from Park.
Blue Canyon, yeah.
To Bodell. It's interesting, on Lake Whatcom, all of the post boxes, mailboxes, were at the end of the docks. Because there was no road down there. Mail was delivered by a mailboat. So they went out the end of their docks to get their mail. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't know that until I talked to the guy, and that was fairly recent that they were still getting their mail at the end of the dock.
I wanted to ask about the border. What was the border like in those days? I mean,
The border?
yeah, between us and Canada?
Yeah. Well, we went over quite often. We liked to go over for picnics in Vancouver and the Stanley Park and all that. Harrison Hot Springs and Cultus Lake. And I was a Boy Scout in 38, I think it was. And we went up to Silver Lake, and that's where the Boy Scout camp was.
Yeah.
And I remember I saved a, what do you call it, thing that grows on a tree, like a mushroom, only it's...
Bracket fungus?
What was it?
A bracket fungus?
Well, we called it something else. Anyway, I wrote my initials on the thing. It was white, and you could get a nice souvenir. I had that, like I have other things here.
Well, that was a fungus?
Fungus is
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
A fungus.
Mike,
The
yeah.
Boy Scouts used to hike across the border all the time.
Oh, did they?
They'd hike up to Cullis Lake
Oh,
from Hannigan Pass.
I
They
thought
would
that was
hike right across
beautiful
and
then.
come back.
just beautiful.
But we used to go across pretty easily. It was pretty easy to go across.
Yeah. I just try to imagine what it was like in those days.
Well, it was, they only had one person there, one station. Didn't have multiple lanes.
Oh, you mean they didn't have one Blaine? They didn't have one?
Oh yeah, had one Blaine, Linden, and Sumas.
Oh, it's what they have now.
But they only had one lane in each
Oh,
direction.
to each one. Oh,
Now they have what, 4 or 5 lanes in Linden, don't they? 3 lanes?
I
4 lanes?
don't think they have that many.
So I think Blaine has 4 or 5 lanes.
Yeah, the main one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not truck cross. Truck cross, I think it's 3 though.
could be. They're freeway.
Anyway, they're always rebuilding them and making them bigger and making it more restricted.
Yeah.
Brick Dunlap works as a border crossing guard, so I get some of the insights. You know, there's, 700 trucks a day go through Sumas?
I can't believe it.
Huge.
700?
700, they go down Highway 9.
I
Go ahead.
can imagine.
We used to have kids go to Nooksack High from Canada.
Mhm.
They would ride the bus and come to school
Oh,
From Canada,
from right across the line at Sumas.
yeah.
and go to school in Washington?
One of the interesting things, I think, I don't know whether it was put across the border or not, but the kids that were from Abbotsford, that are born in Canada, they were born in the hospitals in Sumas.
Oh,
But they had Canadian birth dates, and they were born in Abbotsford or Sumas,
Yeah.
Canada, but they really were born on this side of the border in the hospitals,
But they lived
the
on
3 little hospitals that were in Sumas.
And Dr.
Because there was
Sarvis,
no hospitals in Abbotsford at all.
Dr. Sarvis was a doctor in Sumas.
Yeah, Dr. Sarvis is one of the doctors in Sumas.
And the
And they
music,
have to put their birth in the state that they were actually born in.
They're supposed to,
Yeah.
but their birth certificates say Abbotsford or Sumas, Washington, Canada. They don't say Sumas, Washington. But that's,
Yeah,
I didn't know that until
yeah,
fairly
anything
recently.
legal has to be.
Because there was no hospitals or
Yeah.
anything in Abbotsford across the line. Everything was on this side of the border.
They just really couldn't help it.
Of course, a lot of them were born at home. So,
Yeah, and that would solve that problem.
see, I was 35, I was still born at home.
Yep.
So, my mother went to the hospital with my oldest sister, and she said she'd never go back unless they carried her there.
That's
So
the way
my
I
little
feel
sister and I
now.
were born at home. Other questions? We can keep you here all night if you want to, but we don't want to.
Virginia Kostelick used to come to the Everson Church, and she's in Bellingham working in a senior center. And she used to live up by the shoe decks, and where did they live? Oh, right next to Harkness is the reason I'm mentioning it, because Virginia Kostelick was, what was her mother's name? Foch. Edna Foch was Virginia Kostelick's mother. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having us.